The federal government has unveiled details of a plan to allow foreign citizens to enlist for the Australian Defence Force. For more on this, I'm joined by former Special Forces veteran and veteran advocate Heston Russell. Heston, good to see you. First of all, your initial thoughts on this idea?
Hey, g'day, Laura. Good to be chatting to you on Sky again. Well, I think we all know we've been in quite the recruitment crisis in the Defence Force, and I guess this is another string in the bow of options to be put forward. I'm just very keen to understand the overall strategy being put at play here, given, as you would know, there's been a recent changeover of the senior leadership in the Defence Force, and I hope that these plans are coming from the ground up and not just top down, plucking at some low-hanging fruit, because the way in which we bring people and train them into our Defence Force is a massive part of our Australian culture and our ultimate warfighting culture.
Yeah, what would you think foreigners would do to that culture? Would it be an issue, do you think, or would it have to be done delicately?
I think it's a good idea as a part of a whole wider strategy, not exclusively. I mean, people who want to sign up to the values of our nation and serve, it's a bit Starship Troopers service equals citizenship, I think is a great idea, particularly if we're looking at other countries within the Asian Pacific region, our Polynesian neighbours, others that are fantastic warriors at the tribal level. I think everyone will always say there are national security requirements to this, absolutely, but there's compartmentalisation and very professional processes within the military to do that. I just really think, and I really want to dive into where these sort of plans are coming from, because for the last few years, 5 years, I think we've seen the Defence Force shrinking at a time when we need it most to be building. And there's a lot of contracted options to external providers, but there's some brilliant people stepping up. The new Chief of Defence Force, David Johnson, the new Special Operations Commander, Garth Gould, who I worked with since he was a major. There's some fantastic people in there, and I hope they're getting the chance to put their thoughts forward, because we need people who are selecting and recruiting our own, some of our best selecting and recruiting our own, not, I'm sorry, but people in Canberra reaching down and looking at how we can grow numbers as opposed to proper capability that is competent human beings.
Yeah, that's right. And the government's own document says we're about 5,000 short in the ADF, so that's not going to be made up from foreigners alone. It is a pretty small piece of the puzzle, something that we're concentrating on today. But I thought this, Heston, was a good opportunity to talk about what's not being talked about in Canberra, which needs to be. And this is over successive governments, the treatment of veterans upon their return. We've had a Royal Commission. We have an epidemic when it comes to former soldiers dying after they come home by suicide. And I don't think this is a really difficult topic to address and fix, but surely there is a link here between retaining these amazing people that want to enter the ADF and serve their country, recruiting young people, inspiring them to join the ADF. And then, we're talking about our treatment of veterans still and how it's still not up to standard. Surely there's a link there.
Laura, I smile because I know you're not a veteran yourself, but you've hit the nail on the head. And, at the intuitive level, most of us join the military from being exposed to other military members in our families, young men being inspired by or seeing aspirational men that we wanted to become, that self-actualized version of ourselves, as Maslow puts it. And the best form of recruitment is actually veterans and other military members recruiting others. And what is occurring is that we're no longer doing that because we no longer trust the system. I've told my nephew that I don't want him to join until after this Royal Commission. And I've had many meetings and was live with you when we had our demonstration at the front of Parliament when the vote went ahead. Nick Caldos and his team are doing a fantastic job. And in September or October, when those recommendations come down, the Australian people are going to see that, we've lost more than twice the number of veterans that died during the Vietnam War to suicide since we deployed to Afghanistan. More than 35 times the number of veterans we lost in combat in Afghanistan and Iraq combined. And not a lot of that is coming from post-traumatic stress. A lot of that is coming from this thing called moral injury, where people are having their morals and their values undermined by a system that abandons them. And as a very small case, I've spent the last 4 years fighting the ABC, including in the federal court, when they accused me and my soldiers of being war criminals, at a time where we literally weren't even in Afghanistan. And despite me writing to the Department of Defence and asking for their support, they wouldn't speak up, and I had to personally link in with people like Sue Chrysanthu and Rebecca Giles to take them to court. We're not willing to stand up for our servicemen and women after they have served, what are we going to do? And these aren't just my words. My grandfather fought in Korea and in Vietnam. And just before he died, he just said, don't let them treat your soldiers the way they treated mine.
Yeah.
And we need to fix the culture. We need to fix the system of how we recruit, retain, and look to then pass on into civilian society, our veterans. And that's what we need this new leadership to do. That's what we need this Royal Commission to do. I hope there's a little bit more patience to wait for that. And I hope we're not just going to go down a scattergun or dragnet recruitment process, because we need to fix the culture first, and it will attract the right people to build the best military, not just bums on seats.
Absolutely. And look, I'm about to speak to a guy called David Bellavia from the US. He's a US veteran on my podcast coming up, and he's so inspiring. I'm sure you are aware of him, but he says to his fellow veterans, the best thing you can do to anyone thinking about joining national service is to tell them what your life is like now, what the ADF did to set you up for life after the Defence Force. Do you think there's a lot of truth in that?
Look, Laura, the Defence Force took a fat kid with no friends playing his Nintendo 64 downstairs into being a commando platoon commander who I feel unstoppable these days based on the training, the values, the ethics, and the exposure I gained in the Defence Force. It is a fantastic machine at training warriors. It's a terrible machine at reintegrating them into society.
Yeah.
In 2015, I was deployed over here to the US, where I'm at the moment with the Rangers. In 2017, to Iraq with them again. The US has a great mindset of recruiting people for a period of service, knowing that they will then go on to being better people in society. Whereas the Australian Defence Force has this terrible mindset of recruiting people for a life, as opposed to having that maturity to say it will end one day and you need to be prepared for that and put the mechanisms in place to keep them grounded along the way. Small little bits and pieces that I did not realize these things during my time in service. I only realized these things once I transitioned and failed and went through my own mental health crisis and suicidal ideation. And a large part of what needs to happen is the military and the Defence Force needs to have a little bit of humility and listen to some of us in the veteran community who want to help build the best capability we can and work together as a team, as opposed to thinking, hey, we're the ones in the uniform, we're the ones who know boats. We all do. It's a team effort. It's one country and we need to get back to supporting it.
Well, thank you for your service and thank you for your time today, Heston. Really appreciate it. We'll speak soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Laura.